watching GVTV News.
Thanks, Amy, and I'm Randy Hansen. In today's World News headlines, administration orders military planning for Syria intervention. The Syrian minister defects from Assad government. UN humanitarian chief visits completely destroyed neighborhood in Homs. And 17 killed in Iraq attacks. And 6 UK soldiers killed in Afghanistan. U.S. probes Afghan Air Force for drug and weapons trafficking. And out of Egypt, court cancels death penalty for sole policeman tried in protest deaths. And rollback of reproductive rights advances in multiple states. And Cuba to avoid OAS meeting following U.S. objection. And the report says number of U.S. hate groups on the rise. The lawsuit seeks voting rights for California prisoners. And Stanford convicted in $8 billion Ponzi scheme. GVTV News would like to say the views expressed on our news broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views of NCTV Digital Media Center. Unlike some news media, anyone can use any information on our news any way you want, and guess what? It's free. You do not have to subscribe to us for your daily news. But before these stories, GVTV News would like to thank one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. In today's first world news story, the Pentagon has confirmed the White House has authorized early stages of planning for potential military action in Syria. Speaking before Senate committee, General Martin Dempsey, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, said military officials have prepared a preliminary commander's estimate of how a battle would play out for President Obama's National Security Council. Dempsey outlined some of the military actions the United States could take. He said humanitarian relief, no-fly zone, maritime interdiction, humanitarian corridor, and limited aerial strikes, for example. And we're at what I would describe as a commander's estimate level of detail, not detailed planning. Have not been briefed to the President, have been discussed with the President's National Security Staff. And as General James Mattis testified yesterday, the next step would be to take whatever options we deem to be feasible into the next level of planning. Testifying along the Dempsey, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said the planning is in the preliminary phase and would only get more detail at President Obama's request. During the hearing, Panetta was questioned by Republican Senator John McCain, who this week became the first U.S. lawmaker to call for the U.S. bombing in Syria. And McCain said, "Can you tell us how much longer the killing would have to continue and how many additional civilian lives would have to be lost in order to convince you that military measures of this kind that we're proposing necessary to end the killing and force to leave power? How many more have to die? 10,000 more? 20,000 more? How many more?" Panetta responded, "I think the question, as you stated yourself, Senator, is the effort to build an international consensus on what action we do take. That makes the most sense. What doesn't make sense is to take unilateral action at this point." Syria's deputy oil minister has announced he is resigning from his post and aligning himself with the uprising against President Bashar al-Assad. Abdel Hussein is the highest-ranking Syrian official to defect in a year-long uprising against Assad to date. In a video statement, Hussein said he had served 33 years in various government posts, but that he is now leaving the regime and joining the Dignified People's Revolution. And UN humanitarian chief Valerie Amos has completed a brief tour of the former rebel stronghold of Baba Amir in Homs. Speaking to reporters in Damascus Thursday, Amos said the neighborhood is completely destroyed. She said most residents have fled the area following a nearly month-long military siege. A spokesperson for the International Committee of Red Cross said relief workers have also found that most Baba Amir residents have fled. Hicham Hassan said the Syrian Arab Red Crescent finally got into the neighborhood of Baba Amir. The team stayed only around 45 minutes. Volunteers told us later that after they had left, that most inhabitants had left the neighborhoods to other areas to be within the city of Homs or outside the city of Homs, such as the village of Abel. We had reached today with Syrian Red Crescent in order to assist the people. This means that hundreds of families are around in Homs or in other areas. And in Iraq, at least 17 people have been killed, 24 wounded in 3 separate attacks. 14 died in a twin bombing in the northern tower of Tal Afar, which is hosting an Arab League summit later this month. Attacks followed the killings of 27 Iraqi police officers earlier this week. And in Afghanistan, 6 British soldiers have been killed in roadside bombing in the southern Helmand province. It was the deadliest attack on UK forces in 6 years. In Afghanistan, U.S. officials have confirmed that they are investigating the Afghan Air Force for potential drug and weapons trafficking. According to the Wall Street Journal, a number of Afghan Air Force officials are suspected of using military aircraft for drug running and moving weapons across Afghanistan. An Egyptian court has overturned the death sentence of a policeman found guilty of shooting 20 protesters during an uprising that forced President Hosni Mubarak from power. Mohammed Abdul Monim was the only officer to have been tried for the deaths of some 846 protesters during Mubarak regime's crackdown. And there have been a number of developments in the Republican-backed campaign against the reproductive rights nationwide. Virginia's Republican Governor Bob McDonnell has signed into law a controversial bill forcing women seeking abortions to have an ultrasound. Meanwhile, in Georgia, the state Senate has approved measures that would ban abortion coverage under the state employees' health care plan and prevent employees of private religious institutions from demanding contraception coverage under their insurance. The New Hampshire State House has passed a similar measure to exempt religious institutions from including contraceptive coverage in their insurance plans. And in Utah, lawmakers have passed legislation that would make their state the first to ban public schools from teaching contraception as a way to prevent pregnancy or sexually transmitted disease. The measure would also bar teaching on homosexuality or issues of human sexuality, with the exception of abstinence before marriage. Cuba has agreed to skip an upcoming meeting of the Organization of American States, or the OAS, avoiding the showdown with the United States. A number of Latin American countries have called for Cuba's participation at the OAS summit in Colombia, following a vote to lift a ban on Cuban membership in 2009. But the Obama administration has pushed back against Cuba's attendance, prompting the bloc of ALBA countries to threaten to withdraw if Cuba was formally excluded. And a new report has found that the number of hate groups in the United States is continued to rise. The Southern Poverty Law Center found the number of groups, organizations against particular racial or religious or other characteristics increased to 1,018 last year, up from 602 year 2000. The group also found a dramatic rise in the number of anti-government, patriot, or militia groups. The growth of hate groups and anti-government organizations has attributed to a range of factors, including antagonism towards President Obama and the economic gulf between the rich and the poor. The League of Women Voters and 2 prisoners' rights groups are suing election officials in California over the rights of tens of thousands of current or former prisoners to vote. The state new realignment law has ended parole for many ex-convicts and sent lower-level offenders to county jails instead of state prisons, where they are barred from voting. Plaintiff says more than 85,000 people who are no longer in state prison or on parole should be allowed to vote in the state June primary. The suit challenges the state memo that said those sentenced to jail or supervision under realignment are not eligible to vote. I wonder who's trying to get those votes. Texas billionaire R. Alan Stanford have been convicted of running a massive Ponzi scheme that defrauded victims around $8 billion. Stanford is found guilty of using his Antigua-based bank to defraud investors by selling them phony certificate of deposit. It's also the biggest known case of investment fraud since the Ponzi scheme run by the New York financier Bernie Madoff. And that's it for World News today. Now we'd like to thank another one of our underwriters who support your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us.
Soundcheck Music Center, the rock and roll connection. We have guitars, amps, drum equipment, sound accessories, lessons, and repairs. We are located at 671 Maltman Drive, Grass Valley. 530-272-7236, open 7 days a week.
No one needs anyone, they don't even just pretend. Jonah's in America. I'm afraid of Americans. I'm afraid of the world. I'm afraid I can't help it. I'm afraid I can't. I'm afraid of Americans. I'm afraid of the world. I'm afraid I can't.
That's right, it's time for the police blotter and pictures in the blotter, not from these actual events, but used for visual aid only. Grass Valley Police Department on Tuesday, 9:43 a.m. A caller from 100 block of Neal Street reported a man urinating behind a building who was gone when officers arrived. At 10:05 a.m., a caller from 1700 block of East Main Street reported a transient camping near a side door each night. At 11:04 a.m., a caller from 300 block of Clark Street reported a woman who might be on drugs. At 12:56 p.m., a caller from 2000 block of Nevada City Highway reported an altercation. At 2:38 p.m., a caller from 100 block of Winchester Street reported a woman trying to swing at the caller. She was cited on suspicion of violating probation. At 3:11 p.m., a caller from 600 block of South Auburn Street reported the theft of Xanax. At 3:17 p.m., a caller reported juveniles stole a flag from downtown. It was returned. At 10:18 p.m., a caller from Idaho Maryland Road, East Main Street, and East Main Street reported that a man in a Bob Marley type clothing smoking marijuana. And Wednesday, 1:17 a.m., a caller from 500 block of East Main Street reported hearing an alarm and seeing suspects running away. No theft was found, and the door to the building was secured. In Nevada County Sheriff's Office on Tuesday, 11:22 a.m., a man from 16,000 block of Rocker Road reported theft of a package in the last week. At 11:39 a.m., a man from the 18,000 block of Courts Court reported someone filed a tax form using his social security number. At 11:49 a.m., a caller from 11,000 block of Nugget Lane reported a residential burglary that occurred in October. At 12:17 p.m., a caller from 10,000 block of Rough and Ready Road reported theft of medication from a mailbox. At 2:38 p.m., a caller from 17,000 block Highway 20 reported a person fraudulently charged $480 on a credit card at Home Depot. 2:44 p.m., a woman from 11,000 block of Suzanne Way reported person selling drugs and harassing her. She said about 5 people were hanging out waiting to buy drugs. The report was unfounded. 2:55 p.m., a woman from 15,000 block of Skaith Bend reported her neighbors might have entered her home to check on her dogs, which they think are neglected. At 4:35 p.m., a caller from 16,000 block of Dugans Road reported a broken window on a maintenance shed. At 5:28 p.m., a caller from Highway 49 and Wolf Road reported a woman dancing and gyrating next to a van. You can't do that. At 5:49 p.m., a caller from 16,000 block of David Way reported Craigslist fraud. 6:37 p.m., multiple callers reported a vehicle in a ditch at Greenhorn and Yama Ways. And Nevada City Police Department on Tuesday, 4:05 p.m., a caller from 300 block of Clay Street reported theft of a license plate. And that's it today for the blotter. Now another thanks to one of our underwriters who supports your only visual video news media in Nevada County. That's right, it's us, GVTV News. Christopher's Old World Deli and Catering Company has brought its delicious food and service downtown Grass Valley. Like desserts? They got 'em. You like international style lunches? They got 'em. Christopher's Deli and Catering for parties, get-togethers, weddings, or whatever. Open 7 days a week. In today's local news, Tom Anderson, judge, files for re-election, and more than 10,000 votes filed in fire tax election after validation of voters' ballot count begins today, actually. Medical marijuana advocates form local chapter of Americans for Safe Access and controversial project to be discussed on Thursday. In a story written by Liz Keller of the Union, Superior Court Judge Thomas Anderson filed his declaration of candidacy and nomination petition to run for re-election Wednesday morning. He served one term after winning a hard-fought race in 2006. Anderson will face attorney George Smirnos, which has coming out swinging with statements painting his opponent as soft on crime. Smirnos, who has said Anderson is not holding convicted felons accountable, and he said he was exceptionally lenient in a recent sentencing of a child molester on his election website. Smirnos also highlighted Anderson's support of drug court. I'm not going to address the person who's running against me or his campaign, Anderson said. My focus needs to stay on my capabilities. It's most important to keep nonpartisan, to keep it focused on essentials. As the incumbent, Anderson hopes voters will focus on the job he's done on the bench in the last 5+ years. Done a great job. I'm running on my experience, my reputation, fundamental ideals, judicial integrity, and following the law wherever it takes. When and if not, it's always appreciated, he said. There's some criteria and community needs from the judge, and that has to be first, loyalty to the Constitution and the law. Law has to come first and last, regardless of your personal feelings. Anderson moved to California in '77 from Pennsylvania, earned his law degree in Golden Gate University School of Law, created a public defender department in Lassen County, and had been in private practice for approximately 15 years. He also served in the courts in San Francisco and Contra Costa counties as a judge pro tem. As administrative judge pro tem and Office of Administrative Hearings, Anderson moved his family to Nevada County in 2000. He was hired to head the county public defender's office. His hire followed the firing of former public defender Dick Campbell. Anderson was elected to Nevada County Superior Court in 2006, re-elected presiding judge by his colleagues on the bench in 2010. His re-election campaign has gotten off to a slow start when the campaign of his opponent, who's already boasts a website, a Twitter account, Facebook page. Anderson does have his own Facebook page with the website still to come. He has a fundraiser concert booked for April 4th. Campaigning in the city judge is difficult. Finding the time is difficult, Anderson said. I won't do any campaigning from the courthouse, and we're really busy. Anderson is hoping the April 4th fundraiser in concert with Lorraine Gervais at the Miners Founder will also serve as an educational tool promoting voting. Most people don't know the judges are even on the ballot, he said. Well, I'll tell you, drug court's very important. I'm glad that he pays attention to that. In a story by Matthew Renda of the Union, the Nevada County Consolidated Fire District received a little more than 10,000 to 22 of the 22,000 ballots. Ballots will be counted in Station 84 on Coyote Street in Nevada City, beginning at 9 a.m. on, well, actually, it was yesterday. By the time I was doing this, I still didn't know what the outcome is. They were dropped off there Tuesday night, and they're going to be checking the signatures, and once everything's verified and everything's done there, the ballots will be delivered to McSweeney and Associates, a CPA and auditing firm contracted by the district, where the ballots will be kept. And on Thursday, well, yesterday, the League of Women's Voters will conduct the final tabulation of the oversight of McSweeney and Associates, who will deliver the ballots to the station. Fire District's tax measure election, which has been marred by procedural errors and miscommunication, would add an estimated $52 to the annual district fire fees of the average single-family dwelling if the measure receives voter approval. Additional measure could help close what the officials say is a $500,000 budget shortfall. Declining property values and subsequent taxes have left officials fretting over how they can sustain fire and medical call service levels. Many residents express alarm over the transparency of the envelopes and the difficulty of properly mailing them to the P.O. box. Communication issues related to where and how the final votes are being tabulated also arose during the voting process. Well, I hope it passes, because it's good for us to be protected. In a story by Liz Keller out of the Union, clock is ticking down as the county works to prepare a draft marijuana cultivation ordinance, possibly in time for the March 27th Board of Supervisors meeting. The proposed ordinance, which drew a standing room only audience at the November board meeting, could limit the number of plants depending on the zoning, as well as grows within 1,000 feet of areas where children gather. But some members of the group assembled to provide input at the ordinance language are moving ahead with plans of their own. Patricia Smith, founder of the nonprofit patient advocacy group Grassroots Solutions, is working to form a Nevada County chapter of Americans for Safe Access. The first membership meeting will be held Saturday. ASA advocates for safe and legal access to medicinal marijuana for qualified patients under Prop 215, Smith said. They're like a broad stroke organization. They fight the big battles. They set precedents in courtrooms. Local chapters are the fine detail people taking care of issues on a local level. At the meeting, Smith will make a brief presentation on ASA history and their record of successful litigation aimed towards increasing access for patients. Meanwhile, members will be asked to select a central committee and learn how to become effective activists. Smith also has planned a discussion of the proposed cultivation ordinance and how it will affect the local community, but with no sign of a draft as of Tuesday. She said the stakeholders have been reduced to holding their breath. An alternative plan might be to convene a panel that could include Don Bessie of Nevada County Against Residential Cannabis Cultivation, Dr. Stephen Bannister, the local attorney, Stephen Munkalt. The panel could discuss the issues that surround the ordinance and why it's necessary. Policing ourselves would be ideal, but that goes against human nature, Smith said. Just trying to ensure patients will have safe access is the primary goal. Founded in 2002 by Steve Scherer, Americans for Safe Access strives to overcome political and legal barriers to medical cannabis through public education, grassroots activism, and media campaigns. ASA has worked very successfully with local governments to draft sensible regulations that work for the community. The organization recently filed suit against the Department of Justice over the stepped-on enforcement measures being used against cannabis clubs and cultivators in California. The complaint alleges that the federal government has misused the Commerce Clause rights outlined in the 10th Amendment to deprive the state of its sovereign ability to chart a different course. And in another story by Matthew Renda of the Union, the Nevada County Planning Commission will be looking for public comment on the Rincon del Rio, the proposed South County project that has elicited controversy since the first being introduced. The comments are to be directed towards the adequacy of the recently released 1,000-page draft environmental impact report, which details various potential impacts to the local environment as a result of the project. Rincon del Rio is a proposed continuing care retirement community project located 1/2 mile east of Highway 49, just south of Lake of the Pines community. Proposal calls for the development of a 215-acre site that encompasses a certain area. The development would be clustered in a 40-acre envelope located in the western half of the site, and the remaining 170 acres remain as open space for potential recreational options. Project is controversial, with some residents of the South County saying the project is too large in scope and not keeping with the rural characters of the area. After feedback is received by the DEIR, it is returned to the independent consultant who crafted the document for comments from stakeholders and members of the public to be addressed. After those comments are investigated by the consultant, a final EIR is subsequently issued and approved of that document by the Nevada County Board of Supervisors is tantamount to project approval. And that's it for local news today. Now we'd like to thank the Union, Amy Goodman, Reuters, Associated Press, and others for the sourcing of our news, and you for watching. You can watch this broadcast on Comcast Cable, NCTV Channel 11 in Nevada County, 8 a.m., 3 p.m., 7:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, Suddenlink 16 in Truckee and Alta Sierra. We are also streamed on the internet at NCTV's Digital Media Center website at nevadacountytv.org. Get a lot of programming there. You get all the programming on the station there. And GVTV.org. Don't forget, Grass Valley Television plays 24/7 on the net, grassvalleytelevision.com. And we post to Facebook, YouTube, blip.tv, and many other podcast sites. Have RSS feed and video podcast on iTunes. Just search under video podcast for GVTV News. Content is controlled by the producer of this newscast, me, and Grass Valley Television. It's not necessarily the opinion of NCTV Digital Media Center. Grass Valley Television also videotapes local events around Nevada County. If you want more information, Grass Valley Television at gmail.com or 362-8889. Grass Valley Television is produced by Rural Counties Television Network. Talk to you tomorrow. Should be Monday. Have a good weekend.
clean like a zest bar. Wouldn't you say so? Is there a place better for my face than the bay? No, hearing beats on the streets to the clubs they go, moving on the dance floor while singing the songs they know. Clean like a zest bar. Wouldn't you say so? Is there a place better for my face than the bay? No, hearing beats on the streets to the clubs they go, moving on the dance floor while singing the songs they know. Clean like a zest bar. Wouldn't you say so? Is there a place better for my face than the bay? No, hearing beats on the streets to the clubs they go, moving on the dance floor while singing the songs they know.